Today I'd like to talk to you about brain weasels and how to, well, not cure them, they're pesky little blighters and very hard to get rid of, but maybe at least to find an antidote to muffle their symptoms, drive them into remission. This is from my own experience of battling the buggers, and I can tell you, though extremely hard to self-medicate, the trick to treating them is surprisingly easy and very cheap. You know what I'm referring to, I'm sure. Brain weasels, or disaster weasels as they're colloquially known, cause those little voices in your head that tell you everything you fear is going to happen, that your self-doubt is simply you being reasonable, that whatever you imagine will go wrong is actually currently going wrong. Weasels are very small, but have earned the nickname nature's psychopaths. Weasels are fast, relentless, and capable of controlling animals far larger than themselves. Once they get in your brain, oh boy, it is hard to get them out, though they look kind of cute in the photos. Just about everyone who works in health and social care would probably describe themselves as caring, compassionate, and empathic. I definitely do. I'm a social worker by profession. I don't get much direct contact with our customers as manager of multiple teams, but I'm a social worker at heart. One of my teams deals with new referrals and requests for assessment into adult social services. It's an incredibly busy team, and I have been known to pick up the phone if no one else is available. Some of my team members are astounded by this. Some roll their eyes and wish that I would just concentrate on badgering HR and finance to get them more staff. Some shake their head in despair, wondering what extra work I will create for them. I work in a rural area. Lots of people come here to retire, while lots of families move away. The result of which is that we have a large elderly population, many with no family close by. And the families visit at weekends and holidays, so we get a lot of calls after such visits, concerned about mum or dad, especially where there are early signs of dementia, confusion, or self-neglect. When I answered these calls, I would explain to the worried relative that under the MCA, that's the Mental Capacity Act, you had to presume capacity, that people were able to make decisions that could be seen as unwise, and that if your dad was refusing help or assessment, there was nothing we could do. But please ring back if the situation changes or your dad consents to an assessment. Often this would be met with information about how their dad was not coping. He was refusing to stop DIY despite falling, or was not eating properly, or the house was unkempt. And I would again explain to them in a compassionate, kind manner about the MCA and how if their dad had capacity and didn't want any help, there was nothing social services could do. And I put the phone down, mentally patting myself on the back for being an empathic yet professional social worker and saving the team by not adding another assessment to the already long waiting list. And then my wife got ill, and the CPN, the community psychiatric nurse, when I aired my concerns about her behaviour and her mood, turned round and told me that, you've guessed it, someone with capacity could make unwise decisions. Blah, de blah, de blah. Because my wife, who had been sectioned briefly a few years earlier, but had made a full recovery, my extremely house-proud, clean, highly conscious of her appearance, active wife, had descended into a space where she didn't dress or wash or care about the house or our dogs, whom she adored and would walk for hours, who floated around the house in a dirty dressing gown, sitting in the kitchen, wringing her hands and smoking, who refused to take the medication that had helped her get to and maintain her inner wellness because she was not ill, but she had capacity. So if she wanted to live like that, she could. I tried to explain that if she had capacity, there was no way she would, but the CPN, professionally and kindly, explained to me again about the MCA. I could have screamed, hit him, burst into tears, all of the above. It was around about this time that the brain weasels struck. Over the next 18 months, in which time my wife was sectioned 4, maybe 5 times, it all became a bit of a blur, to be honest. They took up permanent residence. They did go quiet sometimes, though they would wake up just as I was trying to sleep, as I woke up, and always when I was driving home from work. If my wife was at home, they would share with me all the possibilities of what could await me on my return. the bottle of vodka with scattered packages of tablets across the kitchen table. But this time, it wouldn't just be the vodka that was empty. That the carefully hidden car keys would be gone. And as I was frantically searching, there would be a knock on the door. If my wife was in hospital, the Weasels would turn their attention to our fur babies, left alone in the house all day. Images of the two of them getting caught on something and choking, eating something that poisoned them. Definitely a possibility, as the eldest dog was a known thief, able to break into cupboards, or in a frenzy of boredom after being abandoned, had turned on each other. One time I opened the door to silence, no barks or tail wagging. The disaster Weasels started rubbing their hands in glee as I walked into the living room. On the floor was an empty chocolate wrapper, my boy Gellet moaning on the floor beside it. Anwen was nowhere to be seen. The Weasels high-fived and gave a victory dance. "See," they screamed, "we told you." And then I noticed that the wrapper was actually an old one, and Gellet was actually snoring. And Anwen had made herself comfortable on a mound of clean washing I'd yet to put away. You would have thought this would have silenced the Weasels, wouldn't you? But no, as I said, they are resilient buggers, and the emotional and psychological stress the near miss caused was prime food for these predators. Because you see, the only way to treat brain weasels is to starve them of such sustenance, to not give them room to swirl around, creating the anxieties and disaster scenarios, because they feed off our reaction to them. Watching someone you love go through any kind of illness, either mental or physical, is an awful thing. I've been a social worker for 25 years. I'm an experienced manager. I deal with professionals, people, difficult situations every day. But none of this prepared me for being a carer, for trying to get help from a system I've been involved with all my working life. It's only when you're on the outside you realise how sometimes difficult and unwelcoming it is. Compassionate leadership is something that's grown in popularity and importance. There's clear evidence that compassionate leadership results in more engaged and motivated staff with high levels of well-being, which in return results in high quality care. And compassion is the treatment, the antidote to those brain weasels. Compassion is basically sensitivity to suffering in self and others, with a commitment to try to alleviate and prevent it. Sounds easy, doesn't it? But I thought I was being compassionate and professional, speaking to that daughter, desperately worried about her dad, the brain weasels running round in her head, growing sleek and fat on the distance between them. When my wife was ill, I sometimes compared her to living with a body snatcher. She looked the same-ish. On the outside, there was nothing that made her inside, the humour, the zest for life, the empathy, even the bloody-mindedness. On one of the worst days, worn down by loneliness, a chest infection, and despair, after finding yet another hidden stash of medication, I ran from the house at my wits' end and bereft. The brain weasels were having a field day, telling me nothing would ever be right. My wife wasn't going to get well, and that I was going to be fired because I cried so much in work, which I did. I rang the mental health team and, crying, told the member of staff that I couldn't cope anymore, and if they didn't do something, I was going to leave my wife and home. The member of staff replied basically, "I cannot tell you what to do, whether to leave your wife or stay." Now I know that this member of staff, the same as when I handed out advice about Mental Capacity Act, was being factually correct and professional. She wasn't being deliberately cruel, but was she being compassionate? Being compassionate and being a compassionate leader isn't about having all the answers or telling people what to do. It's about working with people to find shared solutions to problems. I will admit, during the worst times, where I thought I wanted, and probably what that daughter I spoke to wanted, was someone to wave a magic wand, say everything was going to be okay, but that would have been a panacea and not an antidote. I was finally offered the antidote during my wife's final stay in hospital. There's a link there somewhere. They had found the hidden stash of medication in her room and finally understood my concerns. My wife might still have capacity, but I felt they understood now what was happening and started to plan how to resolve it. They They listened to me, they worked with me. They didn't promise me everything would magically be okay, but they were compassionate and they were professional. The brain weasels didn't disappear overnight. The antidote isn't that fast working, but with every injection of compassion, they became weaker and more lethargic. They still wake up now and then, but I'm much better prepared for them. So my message is, be a compassionate leader. Create a culture of compassion that will permeate every inch of your service, your staff, and how they respond to each other, to patients, to carers. It's not difficult, and it doesn't take much time. When my wife was ill, the work was my lifeline, and the compassionate leadership that I had then made me stay in work. Now when I pick up the phone and there is a distressed, worried relative, I'm still professional. I give them the facts and I don't promise to make everything better. I might still tell them about the MCA incapacity because it's the truth. But then I will spend the time asking about their concerns because I damn well know those brain weasels will be active, and giving them suggestions or information that might help lower risk or anxiety. I might not be able to give them a statutory assessment or 3 home care calls a day, but I can give them compassion, and often that's exactly what they're looking for.